I'm Jack Conley. I'm a Passionist priest here in Chicago. In the movie Mr. Holland's Opus, we hear the tale of a young man, a musician, and an idealist who's forced to take a high school teaching job. He sees this as a temporary measure, like playing weddings or bar mitzvahs, because his real work, he believes, is to compose music. Teaching is just a way to pay some bills for now. But he realizes, somewhat gradually, that this is, in fact, his destiny. Glenn Holland begins teaching with great reluctance, but it's not long before he begins rising to the occasion. He popularizes intro music appreciation classes by weaving together Mozart and the Rolling Stones. He battles stuffy colleagues who are alarmed by his innovations, his irreverence, even though Mr. Holland's ideas aren't much more radical than choosing vanilla ice cream over chocolate. As the school principal observes, "Mr. Holland, it has come to my attention that you are teaching our students rock and roll." And Holland retorts, "Stravinsky was the music of the Russian Revolution, if you really want to talk about a breakdown in discipline." Mr. Holland deals ably with challenging students, faculty enemies, his own thwarted dreams to become a composer, and problems within his own family. You see, a major subplot to the story is his relationship with his son, Coltrane. When Mr. Holland and his wife discover that their son is deaf, Holland eases his fear and frustration by becoming more and more involved in the school music program than with his own family life, refusing to even learn sign language. But when the Beatle John Lennon dies, Coltrane confronts his dad, forcing him to face the reality that he's deaf. There's a very dramatic scene when the son teaches his father that he can experience music through light and vibration and depth of soul. Suddenly, Holland realizes how deeply he loves his boy. He sings John Lennon's song, "Beautiful Boy," in a very moving part. By this time, we're no longer simply spectators, we're participants in the story now, as we realize that Mr. Holland's real opus, his legacy, is not a composition, whether a symphony or a concerto. It's a generous life to family, to students, to the world of music. You see, today's readings invite us once again into another of many biblical paradoxes, even conundrums. We're being led into those countless perplexing statements like, we must die to live. We must lose to gain. Be lost in order to be found. Be in the last place in order to arrive in the first place. Or as St. Paul would later say, it is in our weakness that we find strength. Today's readings are not about opening ears. Rather, the evangelist Mark tells us that Jesus is opening hearts. This passage closely parallels the story in Mark's 8th chapter where Jesus cures a blind person. They bring the debilitated one to Jesus, and he takes this person aside, away from the crowd, applies spittle into the person's eyes or ears, kind of earthy and uncouth and even gross, speaking to him, and the cure is effective. What our liturgy is really about then is informing us as listeners, as worshipers. What gets in the way of opening my heart? What is my obstacle to God's overwhelming love, the grace of his presence? What's become a stumbling block to God transforming me today? Be strong, fear not, we hear from Isaiah in our first reading. And in the gospel, he makes the deaf hear and the mute speak. You see, today, a vast majority of disciplines like politics and government, theology and spirituality, physics, geography, and others, all agree that ecology and how climate change impacts our ecosystem is the primary social and moral issue of our day. If I had a child who was diagnosed with a life-threatening disease, and 97% of research personnel and pediatricians prescribed a particular therapy, what would I do? And yet the vast majority of actively publishing climate scientists, 97% of them actually, agree that humans are causing global warming and climate change. Most of the leading scientific organizations from the United States and around the world, the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, a whole host of reputable scientific bodies agree. No, today's readings are not about opening ears. It's about opening our minds and our hearts to God, to a gift of conversion. What will my opus be? What is the obstacle? And what do I choose as my legacy?